Cleveland?
Excuse me?
Room 331. You're the guy from Cleveland, right?
331. I'm from Cleveland.
Well, hi. I'm Liz from the escort service.
Dressed to Kill, and the character of Liz was my first starring role. It was huge for me, and I felt the weight of it when we were shooting it, and leading up to preparing for that character. I knew it was a big responsibility that I was being handed, and I hoped to live up to it. I did a lot of work on that character. How I got the role in Dressed to Kill is a little unique. I was in the middle of shooting 1941, and I went back to New York on a break, and Brian and I got married on that break. And he was writing a script. He was always writing something, and he would read me whatever the new installment was that day. So as I heard him going through the process of the script, and it was really remarkable. It was very visual, very vivid, and you could really see it. And then I had to go back to Los Angeles and finish shooting, and he finished reading me the final installments over the phone. And I remember saying to him, "This is amazing. This is going to be your best movie yet. I can see everything in the movie." And he said, "Well, I'm really glad you like it because I wrote this part for you." So I was delighted, to say the least, and thrilled, and then terrified. We were newly married, we were madly in love, and I think he saw me as a very smart businesswoman and very sexy, with a sense of humor. So I think that it just translated into this larger-than-life character.
Let's face it, you're a whore, huh? Oh, a Park Avenue whore, but you're still a whore. Now, who are you fucking?
Fuck you.
I certainly see aspects of myself in Liz, and hopefully in all of my characters, but specifically in Liz. I'm very independent. I'm very much a businesswoman, and wanting to handle my own money, and very driven, very ambitious, much more so than I ever realized when I was younger. I would like to think of myself as someone who evolved to becoming a free sexual being, which wasn't the way you grew up in the 50s, but living through the 60s and 70s, it kind of freed all of us in a way.
Do you mind if I take off my coat?
No.
And the rest, too?
Now, why would you want to do a thing like that?
Well, because of the size of that cock in your pants.
Preparing for Liz did take some work. Obviously, I wasn't hitting the streets or, calling up John, so that was not there. Brian wrote a very well-drawn character on the outside. So my job was to give an internal life and bring a truth. I had met a young woman when I was in my early 20s in Paris, and she was a beautiful girl from Ohio, a model, just all-American girl. And she was being flown here, there, and around by different men, given beautiful jewelry and very lavish presents. And I thought, what's going on here? How come I'm getting flowers? Where are all the bracelets? What's happening here? And as I got to know her better, she disclosed to me that, and she was very clear, very open about it, that her goal was not to be married, was not to be a wife, was not to raise a family. She wanted to be a mistress. She wanted to be an independent woman. She wanted to have her own money. So I thought about her. When I was preparing for this, I read Nancy Friday, that wrote a couple of books that were all different women's fantasies, and that was very helpful. The costumes. Anne Roth was really instrumental. She had worked on Clute with Jane Fonda, so she had done extensive interviews and research and meetings with call girls. So she gave me a lot of information about them, what they were like and how they carried themselves, and offered to take me to a bar to hang out one night, and I declined. Now I look back, I should have gone. It probably would have been a lot of fun. When you have Anne Roth, who's one of the all-time great costume designers. Not only does she look at the person and the silhouette, but it's also the textures and the kind of colors. We had a long discussion about this character and how I saw her. There's a purple silk charmeuse dress. It was really thin and really soft and flowy. When I put that dress on, I had no bra on, just my panties. This dress laid against my skin in the most incredible way. I felt so sensual and sexy, and so that when I went to do the scene with Cleveland, I really could feel very sexy in that dress. Now that same dress, later on in the subway when I was being hunted down, because of how flimsy and soft it was, gave me a feeling of extreme vulnerability. So I think that when you put all those things together, you've done all your homework of who you think this person is and how she got there in her life and what your intention is in that scene and what you want to accomplish, and then you put the clothes on and you go, ah, there she is.
What's the going rate on running lights?
Did I lose her?
You're doing swell, just swell.
Brian's habit of casting against type almost cost me my role in Carrie. You see me and people think of me as being very sweet and warm and friendly, and the producer didn't think that I could carry off that character. And for Brian, when you cast someone against type, what you're getting is a fuller, richer character because you're expecting something and then you get something else from them. You get a different perspective and a fuller picture of who this person is.
You know, this has a familiar ring to it.
Look, Marino, I'm not interested in your wise-ass remarks. Someone's trying to kill me and I need help.
I'll help you. I got a nice cell. You'll be very safe in it. Hey, Eddie.
Dennis Franz is a perfect example. He had worked with Brian in The Fury. And if you meet Dennis, he is so sweet and so kind, and he's always this tough cop. And what ends up happening as an audience as you're watching him, you think, well, I like him. I don't know why I like him. I shouldn't like him, but I do, because that other layer of the character is filtering through. There's a great advantage of working with actors and directors more than once. First time, it's a getting to know you and falling in love period. And then when you get to the second piece or third piece, there's really a shortcut in the language. You can communicate very easily with one another. A director will know what an actor's strengths and weaknesses are, what they can perhaps bring to a character that might be missing. And there's a trust that develops. Because you're very vulnerable as an actor when you kind of surrender yourself to that director. So I think that you're more apt to take bigger risks.
Blonde must be one of Elliot's patients. I was unloading my camera when I saw her come out of his office, and I followed her to you.
What was that stuff you sprayed on her?
It was a kind of mace I made at home. It's a pretty simple compound of sodium.
Look, save the
and,
Mr. Wizard lecture. I wouldn't know sodium from atom.
I loved working with Keith Gordon. There's a great example of having worked with someone before and the trust being there and the willingness to just play and have fun. We met on home movies and had a great time working with him on that. We had a really nice rapport. Very smart young man. He became an incredibly talented director. In the casting process, the character was originally younger. I think the boy was supposed to be about 12 years old. And as we started reading with a few, you could see it just was not going to work. And Brian said, what about Keith? And we brought him in and read, and it was like perfect.
My mom would be dead if I had gone with.
You shouldn't feel responsible for your mother's death. If you talk about it, I might be able to help.
Do you know who killed her?
No,
And you can't help, can you?
not now, maybe.
I loved Michael Caine. The first time we met was at our first rehearsal. So he walked into the office, sat down, and started to read through the scene where I try to seduce him. And, you know, I say an awful lot of things, rather bold things I say to him, and I was so nervous. I mean, it's Michael Caine. I was terrified. So we got through that first bit of reading, and then we took a break, and Michael said to me, he said, isn't it odd? Isn't it odd what we do? We don't even know someone. We actors, we just say hello, how are you? And then we start, practically taking our clothes off in front of them like it's nothing. And we say things that we wouldn't even say to someone that we know very well in most cases. So he put me at ease. I laughed, and I loved working with him. He's so present. When we were shooting the scene in Dr. Elliott's office, it was a very tight set. It was so tight, there was really no place for him to be. And he didn't have any lines in this piece. So Brian said, why don't you go relax, Michael? Let me get this with Nancy and we'll bring you back in for the reverse. He said, no, I'm gonna stay. I'll find a spot because she'll feel me. She'll know I'm in the room. So he sat there while we shot this scene again and again and again, because Brian liked to do a lot of takes. And when there's that much camera stuff going on, you frequently have things you have to redo. And I just thought, what a generous man. But he was smart, because what you know, of course, is that you're only as good as the other person in the scene. If both people aren't terrific, the scene doesn't work.
Do you ever have any sex that's not paid for?
Is that a proposal?
No. It's what we psychiatrists call a question.
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, I do. For men that turn me on.
What sort of men turn you on?
A mature, doctorly type. Like you.
As an actor working with someone like Brian and other good directors, you really have a lot of freedom, and they're looking for you to explore and bring other aspects of the character to life that might not be on the page. Brian is a very technical director, and every shot is well thought out and choreographed long before he gets to the set. In fact, I think he feels like he's already shot the movie once he's drawn it out. His storyboard used to surround him all around his office, so he could walk you through scene by scene and explain what was going to be shot and how. You worked it out in rehearsal. And one of the reasons I think that he rehearsed his actors, at least then, so thoroughly, was that they were really comfortable and knew what they were doing before they got to the set. So once you add the extra component of a very complex shooting style, the actors can kind of go with the flow. There's a scene in slow motion at the end after he's been shot, where it tracks from Michael on the ground, the wig falling off, and then it goes over to Keith, and then it picks up the Susanna Clem, the other character. My hands had to come down into frame at a certain time. So the timing was so difficult. The bathroom scene in the dream at the end, that was really hard. First of all, it was really hard to be naked. The water was trickling, it was sort of lukewarm, I was freezing. The razor is supposed to come out and cut my throat from the medicine cabinet. The throat slashing, it was this prosthetic, and you couldn't see it, it was hidden. While there was someone pumping the blood, there was someone else who would pull a string that would make the cut appear at the same time. So you really, literally had to be breathing together at the same time to get it to work. It wasn't as hard for me because I danced, so it was almost like that camera was almost like the silent partner for me. So I could, once we rehearsed it, I could feel it, but I think it can be very challenging. I look back on my work in Dress to Kill, as I do with the body of work that I had with Brian De Palma, as an incredible time of my life, tremendous opportunity to play varied roles. Here we are 35 years later, we're still talking about Dress to Kill. I'm still doing interviews about Blowout. Carrie, the original one, is still the best of the best. How incredible to be part of the history of this director's body of work that people look at as his finest stuff. So I'm very grateful.